Sarah Martinez adjusted her designer blazer for the third time as she sat in the upscale cafe, checking her Cartier watch with growing impatience. The blind date her assistant had arranged was already 15 minutes late, and she was beginning to question why she'd agreed to this in the first place. As the CEO of Martinez Industries, a multi-million-dollar tech company she'd built from the ground up, Sarah barely had time for business meetings, let alone romantic entanglements with men who were probably only interested in her wealth. At 34, Sarah had everything she thought she wanted: a penthouse apartment overlooking the city, a successful company, and enough money to ensure her 8-year-old daughter Emma would never want for anything. What she didn't have was someone to share it with. After her ex-husband had left when Emma was just 2, taking half her assets and none of the responsibility, Sarah had sworn off men entirely. But lately, watching Emma ask why other kids had daddies at school events, she'd begun to wonder if perhaps she was being too closed off. The cafe door chimed, and Sarah looked up to see a man scanning the room uncertainly. He was tall with kind brown eyes and slightly disheveled dark hair, wearing a simple button-down shirt and khakis that had clearly seen better days. This couldn't possibly be her date. Her assistant had promised to find someone suitable, code for wealthy and successful enough to match her status. This man looked like he'd be more comfortable fixing a leaky pipe than discussing quarterly earnings. But then he approached her table, a hesitant smile crossing his face. "Sarah Martinez? I'm David Chen. I'm so sorry I'm late. There was an incident at work that I had to handle." Sarah's perfectly manicured eyebrows rose slightly as she extended her hand for a brief, professional shake. "An incident at work?" she asked, her tone carefully neutral despite her growing confusion. David's cheeks reddened slightly. "I'm the head of maintenance at Riverside Elementary. One of the boilers started acting up right as the kids were getting ready to go home, and I couldn't leave until I was sure it was safe." He slid into the seat across from her, his movements careful and deliberate. "I know this probably isn't what you expected." Sarah's mind raced. A janitor. Her assistant had set her up with a janitor. She could already imagine the headlines if the press got wind of this. Tech CEO dates school custodian. Her board of directors would have a field day. She should make an excuse and leave right now. Instead, she found herself studying David's face. There was something genuine about his concern for those children that gave her pause. "You stayed late to fix a boiler for students who had already gone home?" "Well, they'd be back tomorrow morning," David said simply. "And it's supposed to get cold tonight. I couldn't risk the heating system failing overnight." He gestured to the server. "Can I get you something to drink? Coffee? I know this place makes excellent lattes." Despite herself, Sarah felt a small smile tugging at her lips. "You know about the lattes here? I come here sometimes on weekends with my daughter Mia. She's 9 and has very strong opinions about foam art." David's entire demeanor softened when he mentioned his child. "She insists that anything less than a perfect rosette is unacceptable." "You have a daughter too?" Sarah's interest was genuinely piqued now. "Yeah, just me and her. Her mom passed away when Mia was 4. David's voice carried a quiet strength that spoke of someone who had weathered significant storms. "Cancer. It's been just the 2 of us for 5 years now." Sarah felt her carefully constructed walls falter slightly. She recognized the look in David's eyes, the same fierce protectiveness she felt for Emma, the same weight of being solely responsible for another human being's happiness and well-being. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said softly. "I have a daughter too. Emma's 8. Her father, well, let's just say he wasn't cut out for family life." They talked for 2 hours. David told her about Mia's love of science experiments and her dream of becoming an astronaut. He spoke about the satisfaction he found in his work, how he enjoyed being someone the kids could count on, always there with a smile and a band-aid when needed. Sarah found herself sharing things she hadn't told anyone: how lonely it could be at the top, how she sometimes wondered if she was failing Emma by working so much, how she'd built walls so high she wasn't sure she remembered how to let anyone in. "You know," David said, stirring his coffee thoughtfully, "Mia asked me something the other day that really stuck with me. She wanted to know why grown-ups always seem to think that having more stuff makes you more important. She said her friend's dad drives a fancy car and wears expensive suits, but he never comes to school plays or helps with science projects. Sarah felt a pang of recognition. And what did you tell her? I told her that being important isn't about what you have, it's about what you do with what you've been given. Whether that's $1 billion or just a mop and bucket, what matters is how you use it to make other people's lives better. The simple wisdom in his words hit Sarah harder than any business strategy she'd ever heard. She thought about her company, about all the jobs she'd created, the innovations they'd developed. But she also thought about all the school events she'd missed, all the bedtime stories she'd delegated to nannies. When they finally left the cafe, Sarah surprised herself by agreeing to see David again. Not at some high-end restaurant where she'd feel comfortable, but at the local park where their daughters could meet and play. The following Saturday, Sarah found herself in jeans and sneakers, outfit combination she hadn't worn in years, pushing Emma on the swings while David helped Mia across the monkey bars. The two girls had taken to each other immediately, bonding over their shared love of adventure books and their mutual disdain for vegetables. "Mom, can David fix my bike?" Emma asked later as they walked to the parking area. "The chain keeps falling off, and you said we'd have to take it to a shop." Before Sarah could respond, David was already examining the small pink bicycle. "I think I can handle this," he said, producing a small tool kit from his truck. "Always keep these handy. You never know when someone might need help." Sarah watched him work, his hands confident and sure as he adjusted the chain and tightened various components. Emma chatted away beside him, asking questions about how bikes worked and why chains fell off. David answered each question with patience and genuine interest, never talking down to her or dismissing her curiosity. "There you go," he said finally, spinning the wheel to test his work. "Should be good as new. How much do I owe you?" Sarah asked automatically, reaching for her purse. David looked genuinely surprised. "Nothing. It's what neighbors do for each other." That night, after Emma had gone to bed still talking excitedly about her new friend Mia and how cool David was, Sarah sat in her home office staring at financial reports without really seeing them. She kept thinking about David's hands as he'd fixed Emma's bike, the way he'd listened to her daughter's endless questions with genuine interest, the way he'd looked at Sarah herself, not as a bank account or a business opportunity, but simply as Sarah. Over the following weeks, Sarah found herself looking forward to their dates with an anticipation she hadn't felt in years. David never asked her to pay for expensive dinners or tried to impress her with material things he couldn't afford. Instead, he showed her parts of the city she'd never seen, a small family restaurant where the owner's grandmother made pasta by hand, a community garden where he volunteered on weekends, a bookstore cafe where Mia liked to read on rainy afternoons. "You know what I love about you," David said one evening as they walked along the riverfront while the girls fed ducks ahead of them. "You ask real questions. Most people, when they find out what I do, they either look down on me or they start talking to me like I'm some kind of noble savage. But you ask me about my day like it actually matters to you what I did." "It does matter to me," Sarah said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. "You take care of hundreds of kids every day. You make sure they're safe and comfortable. That's not a small thing, David. That's everything." The moment she'd been dreading came 3 months into their relationship. Sarah's company was hosting its annual charity gala, a black-tie affair attended by the city's elite. She'd been photographed at these events for years, always alone, always polished and untouchable. This year, she wanted David by her side. "I don't think that's a good idea," David said when she asked him. "Sarah, look at me. Really look at me. I'm not part of your world. I don't own a tuxedo. I've never been to anything fancier than a wedding at a church hall. Your friends, your colleagues, they're going to take one look at me and wonder what you're thinking. I'm thinking that I want to be with someone who makes me laugh, who loves my daughter, who fixes boilers in his spare time to keep kids warm," Sarah said firmly. "I'm thinking that I'm tired of being surrounded by people who only see dollar signs when they look at me." The night of the gala, David looked handsome but clearly uncomfortable in his rented tuxedo. Sarah could see him taking in the opulent ballroom, the designer gowns, the casual conversations about stock portfolios and vacation homes in the Hamptons. She watched several of her colleagues' eyes widen when she introduced David as her boyfriend, saw the quick glances they exchanged when they thought she wasn't looking. "Sarah, darling." Her business partner Richard approached with his wife in tow. "I don't think we've met your friend." The way he said friend made Sarah's jaw tighten, but before she could respond, David stepped forward with an easy smile. "David Chun," he said, offering his hand. "I've heard wonderful things about your work with the Literacy Foundation." Richard looked surprised that David knew about his charitable work, and soon they were deep in conversation about reading programs and educational funding. Sarah watched in amazement as David held his own, asking thoughtful questions and sharing insights from his daily interactions with students and teachers. Later that evening, as they swayed together on the dance floor, David whispered in her ear, "Thank you for bringing me tonight. I know it wasn't easy. It was exactly what I needed." Sarah replied, meaning every word. "You remind me who I want to be." 6 months later, Sarah made a decision that shocked her board of directors and delighted the local press. She announced that Martinez Industries would be partnering with the school district to fund comprehensive maintenance programs and educational technology initiatives. She would be taking a more hands-on role in the company's charitable work, spending time in schools and community centers rather than just writing checks from her corporate office. "Some people think I've lost my mind," she told David one evening as they prepared dinner together in his modest kitchen while their daughters did homework at the table. "They think you've somehow diminished my ambitions." David paused in his chopping of vegetables, looking at her seriously. "Have I?" Sarah considered this, looking around the small, warm kitchen filled with the sounds of their children's laughter, smelling the simple but delicious meal they were preparing together. She thought about her penthouse apartment with its sterile perfection, about all the business dinners where she'd felt utterly alone despite being surrounded by people. "No," she said finally. "You've helped me remember what my real ambitions were all along. I wanted to build something meaningful, something that mattered. I just got so caught up in the building that I forgot about the meaning." A year after their first awkward meeting in that upscale cafe, David proposed to Sarah in the community garden where he volunteered. It wasn't a grand gesture with expensive rings and elaborate planning. Instead, he brought her there on a Saturday morning when the early spring flowers were just beginning to bloom, while Emma and Mia played nearby. "I know I can't give you diamonds or fancy vacations," he said, getting down on one knee with a simple but beautiful ring. "But I can promise you that every day for the rest of my life, I'll love you for exactly who you are, not what you have. I'll be there to fix your daughter's bike and listen to your fears and celebrate your successes. Will you marry me?" Sarah looked at this man who had taught her that true wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts but in moments of genuine connection, in the laughter of children, in the satisfaction of work that mattered. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, successful but lonely, powerful but empty, and the woman she'd become with David's love. "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face as Emma and Mia came running over to celebrate. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." As David slipped the ring onto her finger, Sarah realized that sometimes the most valuable things in life came in the most unexpected packages. Her millionaire status had never made her feel as rich as she did in this moment, surrounded by the people who loved her not for what she could provide, but for who she chose to be.